I stood at the base of the staircase for what felt like hours. The banister was smooth under my fingers, the wood strangely warm as if someone had just gone up. I tried to listen for footsteps, or voices, or anything, but all I heard was the slow tick, tick, tick of the clock that didn't move. I began the climb. The steps didn't creak. That bothered me more than if they had. They felt practiced, worn in, like they knew me, like they'd carried me up 1,000 times before, just not in this life. There were 5 doors upstairs. 4 were closed. 1 stood slightly ajar. That one, the one at the very end of the hallway, the one where my cousin Jacob died. They told me he fell, that he tripped and broke his neck, that it was tragic and sudden and awful. But I remember his screams. I remember standing at the top of those stairs as a child, frozen, while something in that room pulled him back in. They said I was in shock, that children's memories are unreliable. But the moment I touched the doorknob, I knew I hadn't remembered wrong. The metal burned cold. Inside, the room was exactly how Jacob left it: neatly made bed, comic books on the shelf, little plastic army men still standing guard near the window. Except the air was wrong. It hit me like stepping into a freezer. My breath came out in pale fog. The frost clung to the corners of the ceiling, crawling down the walls in tendrils. And in the center of the room, a circle of salt encased the bed, a perfect ring, undisturbed. You don't put salt in a room unless you're trying to keep something in. That's when I noticed the breathing. Not mine. From the bed, a slow rattling rise and fall, in and out, like someone asleep, but there was no one there. At least, not until I blinked. And suddenly there was. Lying under the covers was a shape, human-shaped but wrong. The skin was pale, too pale, waxen, the limbs too long. The hands folded neatly over its chest, but the fingers were jointed in all the wrong places. It looked like something trying to pretend to be human, and then it moved. Its head turned toward me, slow and cracking like a branch in the wind, and it had my face. No, not my face now. My face as a child, the child I was when I last left this house. It smiled. Then, in a voice that sounded like it was being dragged across gravel, it whispered, "We've been so patient." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only watch as it slowly sat up, dragging its 2 thin legs over the side of the bed. The salt didn't break. It didn't need to, because I was already inside the circle. And the thing, the memory of me that had never left, stood up, tilting its head. It walked toward me, not to hurt, to merge. That's when I ran, down the stairs, through the living room, out into the cold gray light of whatever version of day the Hollow had to offer. The door slammed shut behind me, and the house exhaled, like it had just tasted me for the first time in years. The clock room expanded. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the front yard until the sky turned a shade of gray that could barely be called morning. There were no stars, no wind, just that old swing creaking steadily behind me, like it was keeping time. I should have left. I wanted to leave, but my car was dead. The engine wouldn't even turn over. My phone screen refused to unlock. It just flickered and hummed like it was trying to communicate with something else, not me. By mid-morning, if it was truly morning, I noticed the sound. Ticking. Dozens of clocks. Dozens of ticks. But there were no clocks in the house. At least, not that I remembered. Drawn like I was on rails, I stepped back inside. The sound grew louder, rhythmic, mechanical, like hundreds of tiny hearts, all beating out of sync. It led me to a door I hadn't seen before. Or maybe it had always been there. A narrow, wood-paneled door under the staircase is lightly ajar, the frame dustless, as if it had just been opened yesterday. I hesitated. The ticking was louder now, pulsing through my spine. I opened the door and felt the air drop 10 degrees. A wooden staircase spiraled downward. The light switch didn't work. I used my flashlight. The beam was weak, narrower than I remembered it being. Like the darkness itself was thick. I went down, and down, and down, far longer than a single basement should allow. The walls narrowed. The stairs changed wood to stone, then to something that looked like bone but didn't feel dead. And finally, I reached it. The clock room. I couldn't tell how large it was. The walls curved away, vanishing into shadow. But the clocks were everywhere, floor to ceiling, on shelves, on tables, hanging from the ceiling by rusted chains. Each one ticked. Each one was broken. Some had no hands. Some spun endlessly. Others twitched once every few seconds, like they were trying to wake from a coma. But every single one read the same time. 12, 40, 7. I stared at them, and slowly, without reason, I began to remember. That was the time Jacob screamed. That was the moment he was pulled into the upstairs room. That was the exact second the house locked its memory around us, freezing the hollow like an insect in amber. There was a desk in the center of the room. On it lay a journal, leather-bound. The cover was cracked and stained with something dark and long-dried. My name was engraved into the cover. I opened it. The first entry was from the day I was born. It described things no one could know what the doctor said under his breath. The color of the sky outside the window, even the name of a nurse I never met. Each page chronicled my life in grotesque detail. Not just events, but thoughts, moments of shame, of fear, of regret captured word for word. And at the very end, in the last page, there was this. Entry ends. The rest will be written by the hollow. I shut the book. Suddenly, all the clocks stopped ticking. A silence so complete fell over the room, it almost screamed. Then one by one they began to chime. Not the same sound, not the same rhythm. It was chaos, alarms, bells, ancient, rusted chimes that shook the shelves and cracked the stone beneath my feet. And in that deafening noise, I heard something behind me, breathing. Fast, wet. I turned, and in the reflection of an antique clock's glass dome, I saw a figure just inches from me. Not a person, not a shadow. It was me, but stripped of everything human. Skin pale and stretched, eyes black and shining, like they were filled with time itself. I blinked, and it was gone. The clocks went silent again, but the journal was missing. And when I looked back at the desk, in its place was a mirror, and in the mirror, my reflection stayed just a second too long. Skin memory expanded. By the time I climbed back up from the clock room, I felt like I had shed something, or maybe something had been taken. The air in the house was heavier now, not just still pressurized, like the space between walls had thickened. The doors were closer, the halls tighter. Everything leaned just slightly inward. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I must have, because I woke up outside, lying in the grass, covered in dew. The house stood behind me, like it had grown there overnight, taller, hungrier. I sat up slowly. My shirt was damp, but not from dew, from sweat, or blood, or both. There were symbols drawn in the dirt around me, circles, runes, my handwriting. And in the center where I had been lying was a perfect outline of my body, like the ground had memorized me. I ran to the car, still dead. No signal, no birds, Only the house, watching. I walked until my feet bled, through the trees, past landmarks I didn't recognize, down roads that led back to each other like the forest had been folded in on itself. Every path brought me back to the swing, back to the house. That was when I stopped trying to escape. I went back inside, and I started noticing things I hadn't remembered changing. The photo above the fireplace, me face in it, had aged. Just slightly. I looked like I had the night before. I swear it didn't look like that when I first saw it. The mirror at the stairsit was now cracked. Just once, right down the center. And when I walked past it, I noticed something chilling. My reflection blinked a beat too late. I stared at myself, and something stared back. I started hearing things at night. Not whispers, not footsteps. My voice, sometimes muffled through the walls, sometimes right behind my ear, saying things I never said. Why did you leave me? We could have been one. I checked my body, my hands, my chest, my skin. There were scars I didn't remember. Faint lines, ritualistic patterns cut in thin loops over my ribs, beneath my collarbone, like someone had been writing in me. I spent an hour in the bathroom with the mirror, washing, scraping, peeling. That's when I realized it. This wasn't my skin. It looked like mine, but it was too dry, too tight. It didn't bend the way it used to. It clung to me like wet cloth. I found patches that didn't bleed when I picked at them, just flaked away, like costume leather. There was something beneath it, something waiting to come through. That night, I heard the back door open. I waited in the hallway, holding a kitchen knife that felt laughably small, but nothing came in. Instead, I heard footsteps, slow, barefoot. Then I heard a voice call from the upstairs room. I'm ready now. I don't remember walking. I don't remember what I did when I entered the room. Only that when I looked down, I was holding a sewing needle, and I had stitched something into the walls. My name, over and over, and beneath it, I give myself to the hollow. The mirror room expanded. At some point, I stopped recognizing my own footsteps. I would hear them echo on the floorboards upstairs, while I stood frozen in the kitchen. Soft, measured, familiar, wrong. I had started leaving notes for myself, scraps of paper with things like, don't look in the mirror, sleep facing the wall, the house will lie. But the notes never stayed where I left them. Sometimes they rewrote themselves, and sometimes the handwriting wasn't mine anymore. It was thinner, curlier, more elegant, the same as the letter that brought me here, the same as the writing in the journal from the clock room. I found the mirror room on the 7th day. I know that number because I had been carving tick marks into the wood paneling near the front door, not because I needed to count, but because something in me was terrified of losing sequence, losing meaning, losing self. The mirror room wasn't on any map of the house I remembered, but one day the hallway shifted subtly, and where there had once been a linen closet, there was now a tall black door, carved with symbols I'd seen before, in the dirt, in my skin, in dreams. It opened before I touched it. Inside, mirrors, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, every shape and size, all unbroken, but none of them reflected the same thing. I stood in the center and looked around. My reflection was fragmented, multiplied. Some mirrors showed me as I was. Others showed me younger, older, dressed differently, bleeding, smiling, screaming. One of them showed me asleep in the upstairs bed. Another showed me watching myself from the corner of the room. But one mirror dead center on the far wall was different. It didn't reflect me at all. It showed the room empty, but I could feel myself standing there. I stepped closer. My breath didn't fog the glass. My reflection didn't appear. Instead, behind the surface, something stirred, a ripple, like water. And then, like a film reel, sputtering to life it appeared. Me, but not me. It was wearing my skin, like a child wears a Halloween costume, too loose in some places, too tight in others. The eyes were deep and sunken, but they smiled, not with joy, with relief. It raised its hand and pressed it to the glass. I didn't move. Then it spoke. Its mouth didn't open, but I heard it. One of us is real. The lights flickered. All the mirrors shimmered. I stepped forward and pressed my hand against the glass, mirroring the figure's pose. For a second, I felt warmth, and then cold, burning cold, like my soul had touched something it shouldn't have. I ripped my hand away. Blood smeared the mirror, but not from me, from inside. The glass began to crack just slightly, a thin fracture down the center, and from it, the other me began to split apart, slowly, deliberately, peeling like fruit, and underneath, something ancient, stirred. I backed away, but every mirror now showed it, every version of me peeling, merging, collapsing, and as I fled from the room, the door slammed shut behind me with a sound like the final beat of a stopped heart. On the other side, the mirrors continued to whisper, "You are the memory. You are the echo. The hollow wears you now." Chapter 8. The Final Whisper. Expanded. I don't know how long I ran. I just remember the house changing around me. Walls that had once led to the kitchen now ended in stone. Doors I'd entered a dozen times now opened to blank walls. The staircase inverted, curling not upward, but downward, into a corridor that pulsed like a throat. The air had weight, not like gravity-like memory. The hollow was remembering itself, and I was just a part of that remembering. A moment, a name, a face. Somewhere between the shifting rooms I blacked out. I woke up lying outside again, face in the dirt, hands scraped raw. The sky above me was wrong. It was lightless, not quite night, not quite day. Just a thick, motionless gray, like something had drained all the color out of the world. The house behind me was gone, not destroyed, not buried, just absent, as if it had never been there. But the grass still held the shape of it. The swing still swayed in the air, though the tree was gone, and clutched in my hand, gripped tight like a muscle spasm, was another letter. Same paper, same metallic ink, but this one was shorter. It read, "You are now part of the hollow. If you remember this, it is already too late." I dropped it, but it didn't fall. It floated, like it was too light for gravity, or too heavy for this world. I screamed, or thought I did. No sound came out. The woods were gone. Only fog now. A vast, silent plain, stretching forever, in every direction. I turned around in a slow circle, and realized something. There were others in the distance, dozens of them, standing still, each one facing me, too far to make out their faces. But their outlines, their shapes, looked familiar, like reflections, like variations. Each of them holding a piece of me. One wore the jacket I left in high school. One had the scar I got on my chin when I was 10. One stood with hands, bloody just like mine were in the mirror room. And they were all smiling, not with cruelty, with relief, because they had been waiting. I tried to run, but my legs didn't move. I looked down and saw I was barefoot. My feet were rooted into the dirt. Not metaphorically, literally. Roots had grown from my skin, twisting, splitting, digging into the ground. And from deep below, I felt it, the hollow, breathing, beneath everything, not a place, not even a thing, a consciousness older than God. It didn't want to kill me. It wanted to keep me, to remember me, because that's all the hollow ever was, a grave for memory. And I was now a story it told itself when the world was quiet, a whispered name in the dark. That's when I saw it, my face reflected in the air itself, not flesh, not bone, just an imprint, like I was already fading into the fog. My voice echoed, distant, hollowed out. Your turn. And then silence.